Nigeria's all-share index at the local stock market hit a new record, breaching 91,000 points. That's the highest ever on record for the market. Welcome to Business Edge. I'm Esther Awuni. Many thanks for joining us today. Our market watcher in the course of the show will join us to talk about what exactly is fueling this rally. We're looking at strong fundamentals. Investors just overly optimistic, but he'll be telling us what we should look forward to. Also on the show today, the World Economic Forum, in partnership with the African Continental Free Trade Area, have signed or have come up with a new private sector plan to boost intra-African trade. Well, what will be different this time in terms of the strategy? We'll unpack that later on the show. And finally on the show, we'll be looking at the business of making movies in Nigeria. Nigeria's box office continues to soar. Can the sector seize its moment? We'll be talking to an analyst who will share some numbers and what is driving those numbers. In the meantime, let's bring you some of our top business headlines from across the continent. On to our top headlines. Heineken Lukpobiri, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, has expressed the Nigerian government's support for the sale of Shell's assets, emphasizing the country's commitment to creating a business-friendly environment in the oil and gas sector. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, he addressed Shell's decision to sell its onshore assets to a consortium of Nigerian companies. The government, he stated, will not hinder legitimate business transactions and will promptly review and approve the necessary documents. Lukpobiri also highlighted the benefits of international oil companies diversifying their onshore assets, which creates opportunities for indigenous companies, leading to increased profitability. The government is actively addressing concerns raised by the IOCs, including the carbonization and abandonment issues, and is engaging with companies to invest in pipeline technology and critical infrastructure. Well, he also said that the President Tinubu has approved a licensing bid round to demonstrate the government's commitment to expediting the process. Elsewhere, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission's quarterly report highlights a partial activation of the contract regime in Nigeria's electricity sector. Under the PAC, distribution companies have taken or pay obligations on their partial capacity, ensuring payment for available capacity regardless of offtake. The recent multi-year tariff order allows DISCOs to directly procure bilateral power from generation companies in preparation for the transition of the bulk trader. DISCOs with outstanding debts will enter payment arrangements with a new contracting party as the bulk trader is expected to dissolve in 2024. This initiative aims to eliminate intermediaries, promote accountability, and enable bilateral trading based on actual capacities. The development is seen as a game changer, potentially bringing competition and efficiency to the sector while addressing liquidity challenges. Meanwhile, GENCOs have long complained about not receiving full payment for their supplied electricity. And outside our shores, Kenya has secured a $684.7 million loan from the International Monetary Fund to ease a Eurobond payment pressures. Now, the approved fund, part of a larger $941.2 million augmentation of resources, will be swiftly deposited into the Central Bank of Kenya's account. Kenya sought additional resources from the IMF owing to a balance of payment needs and challenges accessing alternative funding in the international capital market. The IMF recognizes the urgency, considering Kenya's limited options to fully refinance the maturing $2 billion Eurobond in June this year. In addition to the IMF loan, Kenya is pursuing concessional funding from the World Bank and syndicated loans. The government's efforts include exploring Eurobond issuance, potential buybacks, and leveraging forex reserves. The IMF's multi-year program aims to support macroeconomic stability, policy reforms, and inclusive and sustainable growth until April 2023. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll head straight to the markets for an update. To join us again. Welcome back. Now for a focus on the markets. Looks like 2024 is proven to be the year for breaking records at the Nigerian Exchange. The OSHA index soared past 91,000 points, setting a record fueled by a surge in oil and gas stocks. Let's just quickly take a look at the numbers on the screen right now. Market OSHA index up 2% at 91,896 points. Let's go over now to the market capitalization. Well, there you have it. Market capitalization up just over 2% at over 50 trillion naira now. Well, that is a record for the market. Let's go over now to the top gainers for the session yesterday. Corn oil from the oil and gas sector up 10% at 1,112 naira 20 kobo per share. We have John Holt, Unity Bank from the banking sector, NEM Insurance, and Eterna. Speaking about Eterna, the company announced yesterday that it has become the official distributor of petroleum products from the Dangote refinery. According to a statement from the company, it has expanded its trucking capacity and also signed an agreement with a third-party transportation company to help transport those petroleum products from the Dangote refinery. So big news there for Eterna, and I suppose investors have taken note of that news and, of course, thinking about how that all translates and impacts the bottom line at the end of the day and perhaps future dividend payments for investors. So definitely a company to watch out for. Let's go over now to the top losers for yesterday's session. Ikeja Hotel slipping down 9.79%. We have Royal Exchange from the insurance sector. Mutual Benefits are down also. So we have two companies there from three rather from the insurance sector slipping there. But financial services stocks still the most liquid sector of the market. And of course, banking stocks also an investor's favorite. We've seen the market rally for about 6 days now. And of course, we've been asking questions. What is fueling this rally? Is it optimism on the part of investors? Are they looking at the macroeconomy? And are they confident in the reforms that are going to take shape in the course of the year, etc.? But when we come back from the break, I will be speaking to a market watcher to help us make sense of this rally. Join us again. Welcome back. Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO Assured Dynamic Solutions, joins us now to just help us make sense of this rally at the market. Mukhtar, you have also been watching this rally. The market has breached 91,000 points at the highest ever on record. We're seeing, of course, a number of names, particularly in the banking and blue chips, driving this rally. But I must ask you this question. Given the macro environment, we know what some of the macro indicators are when you look at indicators like inflation, availability of naira for many of the companies who operate on the exchange, who were hit by naira scarcity in 2023, with the exception of the banking sector. What is fueling this rally?
Thank you, Esther. Well, before the rally, I think the optimism is there, looking at 2024 going forward, especially with the government blueprint that also is fueling the market. And secondly, again, what is supposed to be bad news for the market is becoming good news for the market. Inflation pressure. People are looking for a way to hedge against inflation. And so the market seems to be the only place that have been able to beat up inflation in 2023 and going into 2024, there's still very high optimism, especially when you look at some of the stocks that are in this market and what the numbers were in their third quarter results. So, and then again, the pension fund administrators are there in the market this time also. And then when you look at the fixed income space, is the kind of return is not relative to the inflationary pressure. So investors are looking for where to put their money, and then they are looking at the equity markets for now seems to be the tools of investors.
Right. If I could just come in here, Mukhtar. You mentioned the fixed income market. You and I know that the fixed income market is a safer bet. I mean, it's safer for investors. Where the risk is at the stock market. And investors appear to be betting big on a riskier market. Help us make sense of that.
Well, investors are being looking at the risky market because of inflation. Like I said, if you're in the fixed income space, you don't get between 12 to 15% in the market. Even the dividend yield alone is about 12%. You're not talking about capital appreciation. You must look at where this market was at the beginning of the year, of last year. At most of those equity were selling at all-time low. Today, they are selling at all-time high. So investors are looking at those space again. And also, some of them also are looking at the numbers. Like I said, especially when you talk about the banking sector, we've seen some prediction. We've seen some of them coming up with what is supposedly going to be their full year result. And then there's a lot of also not to forget the $1 trillion economy that we're planning to build, and then or not to forget that the banking sector are going to be the key driver of this sector, especially the tier one bank. So that also is fueling confidence that we might have a lot of tier two bank coming to the market, even a tier one bank could also have merger and acquisition. So investors are looking at all these news and they're looking at the numbers and taking position. So most investors are not seeing risks in the equity market at this moment. And the good thing about it is that it's driven by local investors, not even foreign investors. So that shows that there's a capacity to withstand the kind of return we are seeing. There's the capacity that these returns can go on and on for some time.
Right. I mean, I guess in summary, high risk, high reward. I wanted to talk about Eterna. News coming out from that company yesterday that it has been chosen to transport refined petroleum products from the Dangote refinery. The company says it has expanded its trucking capacity and also signed a deal with a third-party transportation company to help it in the operations. How are investors reading this news, and what does this mean for a company like Eterna, where it is at the market right now? Would investors be looking forward to a bigger, fatter bottom line, as it were, and perhaps a dividend payment somewhere down the line?
I think investors will be looking at it. Definitely, that's good news. And also, but not forget that the investors will also be looking at the numbers in terms of the kind of distribution network they have. Even if they've said they've entered into partnership with a truck company, how much of the distribution network they are they going to be distributing only to Eternal Oil stations, or they will distribute to other stations? Those are part what investors will be looking at. But I think that's good news. That report came in before the close of market yesterday at the close of market. So we expect that today investors may just be looking at that and taking position in that stock. And again, you should know that that's one of the stocks also that have performed relatively well last year. So especially when the removal of oil of subsidy was announced, the oil and gas sector was one of the premium gainer of that removal, and Eternal Oil was among the big movers. So definitely, it's where investors will be putting their eyes. And when you look at the price variation of Eternal Oil with others contemporary like Corn Oil, Total Oil, definitely is where investors will think the next big thing in the oil and gas sector might just be coming from that spot.
Now, speaking about valuations, how would you compare? What is to be said about the valuations of Nigerian stocks at this time compared to their emerging market pairs? I know that we've been kicked out of the frontier, the MSCI and frontier markets. Also, a follow-up question to that: could we return to those markets this year?
In terms of valuation, I think what is moving when you look at valuation, with all the movement that we've seen in the Nigerian equity market, we still doesn't have a stock that is selling. If the exchange rate as at today, a dollar, I think is, even if you look at, let's just averagely in the when we look at that averagely in the official rate is about 1,000. We still don't have stocks that are selling at that high valuation yet. Those, with exception from Airtel Africa. So definitely, when you look at that valuation of the naira by the dollar, then you still think there's still a lot to happen in this market, especially in the banking sector, where we've seen the revaluation of their assets, especially assets in dollars, that help their bottom line. So that is one thing that investors think is going to fuel the market going forward.
Right.
So the exchange rate, it is supposed to be negative, is becoming positive, especially for the banking sector and the oil and gas sector. But for the consumer sector, it has become a headwind for them. So they are the one trying to battle that, especially with FX companies that are FX driven. Now, you took that there's a question you talked about, would we be brought back into the frontier market? I think that would be the game changer. That could be where the market would sustain its current move if we are able to get back to the frontier market, both frontier market that we are removed from. Then that means foreign investors will begin to have confidence. Like I said, it's the local investors that are driving this market now. So if the foreign investor comes down by a violation in terms of exchange rate, then we could see the market going on a really good run this year. But then again, what are the conditions? The condition is two-way exchange system. The government is still working on that. The CBN have said that they will make sure that they clear all payments that are in dollars before hopefully we're looking at before the end of the first quarter. So definitely when we look at that, then you could say from the second quarter, you might start having the foreign investors coming in.
Mukhtar, final question, and in 10 seconds, for those looking to jump in on this rally, what would be a good entry point in terms of stocks that you have on your radar?
Number one, you've called Internal Oil because of the news. I think it's a good stock. In the insurance sector, we should look at Mason or insurance. Also, that's a good sector. In the banking sector, still not take your eyes off the tier 1 bank. And if you're looking for a tier 2 bank, then you have to also look at Fidelity Bank and also FCMB. Then if you're looking at taking risks, then you could also be going to the Unity Bank and other banks. Then for other sectors, I think the conglomerate Dangote Cement is still moving high. And I think it's still a stock to look at, and also Boa Food, Boa Cement also in the conglomerate sector. So for me, those are my picks for now.
All right. Thank you so much, Mukhtar, for talking to us today. Appreciate your time on the show. That was Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO, AfCFTA Dynamic Solutions, helping us unpack the rally at the Nigerian Exchange Group. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back with our next conversation. Join us again. Welcome back. A new action plan to accelerate intra-African trade was on Thursday this week unveiled by the World Economic Forum in partnership with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, focused on 4 key sectors: automotive, agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and transport. The plan outlines ambitious goals, specific initiatives, and key partnerships to drive inclusive growth and prosperity. But how can Nigeria strategically position itself for the benefits of this new plan? In the next couple of seconds, we'll be speaking to Muda Yusuf, a Chief Executive Officer for the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. But before that, News Central caught up with the Director Trade in Services, Investment, Intellectual Property Rights and Digital Trade at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, Emily Mburu-Ndoria, where she speaks on the successes recorded so far in the implementation of the regional, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Take a look.
The AfCFTA is only 3 years old, and Rome was not built in a day. So we have a lot of work we accept that needs to still be done, but we are going step by step in undertaking that work. And as you are aware, the part of liberalizing trade in goods and trade in services and the necessary protocols have been concluded. And what member states are doing now is to look at the key elements or instruments that need to be developed to make it a reality. And here, when we talk about the key instruments, the conclusion of the negotiations in terms of rules of origin, as was mentioned, is already at 92.5%. When we talk transport and logistics, we already have 22 countries that have made their commitments to actually liberalize the transport services sector. So that already gives us nearly half of the countries that have ratified, that have already committed to open up their transport services sector. The same with communication services sector, where telecommunication actually falls in, and the broadcasting services sector, where your media houses actually fall into, and also the film services and the creative industry that is key for a country like Nigeria. We have concluded a protocol on digital trade. Now, this protocol is now going through the system to be institutionalized and to be adopted under the AU, so that our heads of states and government can actually commit to the implementation of that protocol. One of the key elements is interoperability. And when we have interoperability, we will then be able to have cross-border transfer of data, cross-border payments, and here it will make it easier.
Well, that was a Director, Trade and Services, Investment, Intellectual Property Rights and Digital Trade at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, Emily Mburu-Ndoria, speaking, of course, on the progress of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Now, it's been 3 years since that regional agreement was launched. Progress has been slow as a number of elements within the pact continue to be fine-tuned. But to what extent would you, let's go back to our guest now, Muda Yusuf. He's the CEO of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Muda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Esther.
Before you came on, we're listening to one of the directors at the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat. She was talking about, first she said the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Pact is only 3 years old. Talks are still ongoing in terms of fine-tuning some of the elements within it. She did specifically mention the rules of origin. She says that at around 92%. She says the Secretariat is still speaking to countries, especially in the area of liberalizing their transportation sector. She said 22 countries so far have agreed. So it would appear that there's still so much work to be done, even 3 years later. But my question to you, to what extent has Nigeria been able to benefit and also address on its own side some of the issues that are being worked out for the trade pact as a whole?
Well, I don't think we have made much progress. Don't forget that Nigeria actually signed very reluctantly. I say that because the Manufacturers Association kicked against our being part of the AfCFTA, and for good reasons. They worry about the risk that we are likely to witness an import surge. We are likely to see a lot of products coming from outside the country. And because of the peculiar challenges of our manufacturing and production systems generally, there is no way that they will be able to compete. And when you talk about international trade, whether regional, whether continental, whether global, the name of the game is competitiveness. So as far as production is concerned, Nigeria is not quite ready to compete with many of these other African countries. If you look at the ranking of investment climate ranking, Nigeria doesn't even come within the first 10. The leading countries are countries like South Africa, Botswana, Morocco, Egypt, even Kenya, and some of these, even Ghana have better ranking in terms of the quality of their investment climate. And the benefits to countries will be a function of the competitiveness of the countries, a function of the quality of the investment climate.
Right.
So that is what it is. Right now, we are not in a very good standing. Right. The only area in which we have some strength is more in the area of services.
I wanted to take you back to the rules of origin, which is also still being fine-tuned. Are you saying that there isn't any confidence that adequate guardrails can be put up to stem dumping on the part of countries? One country maybe importing products from maybe somewhere in Asia and then, just changing the label and then dumping it on another African country, claiming that it was made in the home African country. Within the pact, in terms of the fine print, aren't there adequate guardrails to ensure that this doesn't happen?
Well, there are adequate provisions in the protocol. But it's one thing to have something in the protocol. It's another thing to have the institutional capacity to implement it. You can take the example of ECOWAS. We have all sorts of nice things within the ECOWAS protocol. How much of it is being translated into reality? ECOWAS is almost 48 years old. When you talk about economic integration, the West African economic integration is the least. We are the least integrated. The East African economies are better integrated. The North Africans are doing well. The South Africans are there. They're also doing well. So there's what we call these non-tariff barriers. It remains the biggest headache for investors and for trade generally on the continent. The protocol will say one thing, the head of states will say they are committed to it, but the bureaucracy or the institutions, agencies on the ground, they do a completely different thing. So that has been a major challenge. So institutional capacity to enforce and implement these things, I think for me, is the biggest challenge.
All right. Let's move this forward. Now, the World Economic Forum is still ongoing. Today is the last day. Has come up with its own input through a new private sector roadmap, as it were, to help boost intra-African trade in partnership with the African Continental Free Trade Secretariat. Now, they're focusing on a number of areas, including agriculture, the automotive industry, transportation, etc. Now, for the agriculture sector, they are looking at focusing on major cash crops, boosting major cash crops like cocoa. They're looking at leaning more, that's on the part of farmers now, on digitization, etc. What are your thoughts in terms of the document that the continent already has within the African Continental Free Trade Pact or protocol itself, and what the WEF is also imputing? Is it a matter of us having more rules or more, perhaps a better strategy, or, like you just pointed out a few minutes ago, institutional capacity, political will, and actually having the political will to implement what the protocol already states?
Well, the question of political will is important, looking generally at the AfCFTA, because the commitment of countries to the protocols have been extremely slow. I mean, we are 3 years into it. Up till now, even Nigeria has not started trading under the AfCFTA. What we have had at best is what they call pilot trading arrangement, where we have about 4 or 5 countries doing some pilot trading, something like testing how the procedures will work. So the political will is still extremely weak. And if you look at some of the continents, some of the countries, we have serious issues with political stability. Take the West African countries, for instance. More than almost half, or even more than half, are under military rule. So how do you engage the military junta when you are talking about trade? So that is already disconnecting a lot of countries, particularly in West Africa. And even in some parts of East Africa, you have all these issues. But more importantly, it's about the commitment of each of the countries to these protocols. And to also benefit, talking now about Nigeria, we also need to properly reposition ourselves. We are talking of agriculture. How do you progress and benefit from trade in agriculture if you don't deal with the problem of insecurity? How do you benefit from it if you don't deal with the problem of value addition, industrialization, agro-allied industries? These are the ways we can benefit. But do we have the infrastructure to support industrialization? So the risk is still there for us that many of these products will end up coming to Nigeria from outside of the country.
Right.
Because look at our production structure. All the industries are struggling.
Well, speaking about industries, according to the African Continental Free Trade Area, the automotive industry on the continent is taking off due to the regional pact, with the potential for more countries to become involved in the automotive value chain. And it says that new opportunities are emerging for value-added activities to the continent and for the continent to become a leader in the production of electric vehicles to ensure that local value addition is at the forefront. The forum says it is working with its partners to reach a goal of manufacturing 4 to 5 million vehicles by the year 2035 and increasing manufacturing plants across the continent. What do you make of this? I know that automotive industry, this is big in South Africa, but I'm not sure the same can be said for the rest of the continent and even for a country like Nigeria. But let me let you respond to that.
No, we are not. We are almost completely missing as far as automotive industry is concerned. Of course, we are doing some auto assembly here, and it's just assembly. And if you look at the cost of those vehicles, you know that it will be extremely difficult for you to be able to export them outside of Nigeria. Because the beauty of an auto industry is not just about your local market, it's about the market outside of the continent and even outside of your country. Yes, the market is huge on the continent. We have a population of almost 1.4 billion people. We have a GDP of almost 4 trillion US dollars. That is great. But for now, as far as the automotive industry is concerned, I think those who will benefit the most will be South Africa, which is already a hub for many of the OEMs, the original product manufacturers, and some of the countries in North Africa. Those are the countries that will be the beneficiaries. As far as Nigeria is concerned, I don't think we can benefit much from that.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Thank you so much for talking to us today. He's the CEO of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the rest of the show. Do join us again. On to some international headlines now. The U.S. House of Representatives on Thursday approved a stopgap bill to fund its federal government expenditure through early March and avert a partial government shutdown, and has been sent to President Joe Biden for final approval. The measure passed a 314 to 108 vote with 106 Republicans and 2 Democrats in opposition. Earlier on Thursday, the Senate had easily passed the bill with a 77 to 18 vote ahead of the weekend deadline. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, and his House Republican counterpart Mike Johnson earlier this month agreed to a $1.59 trillion discretionary spending level for the year that ends on the 30th of September. But in a sign of how bitterly the Congress is divided, the two parties now disagree on that number, with Democrats saying the actual amount agreed to is $1.66 trillion. Elsewhere, British retail sales volumes slumped by 3.2% in December from November, the biggest decline in nearly 3 years. So that's according to the Office for the National Statistics report on Friday. A forecast had earlier predicted that sales volumes would fall by a median 0.5% on the month, although the estimates ranged widely. The reading raises the risks that Britain's economy will contract in the fourth quarter, following a 0.1% contraction in the third quarter. The ONS said retail sales are likely to subtract 0.04% points from British economic output in the fourth quarter. In the world's third largest economy, according to Reuters' poll of economists on Friday, core consumer inflation in Japan's capital, Tokyo, in January fell below 2% for the first time since May 2022, reinforcing the view that price pressures are easing. The core consumer price index in Tokyo, a leading indicator of nationwide inflation trend, was expected to have climbed 1.9%, according to a median estimate of 18 economists, attributed to a slower increase in energy and food prices. That will follow a 2.1% jump in December. Those are top international business headlines. Let's move on to our last conversation for the show, and that is we're looking at can Nigeria seize its box office moment? Guest for today is Linda Ochugba, Digital Sales Manager, Business Day. Linda, thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, in the last 3 years, we've seen the box office in Nigeria. We saw the box office in Nigeria raking in a total of 19 billion naira in income. It looks like we're seeing that this is a result of both a nationwide spike in ticket sales between 2021 and 2023, and a string of successful film releases. The box office revenue captures the gross earnings of Nollywood titles since 2021 from ticket sales. But what would it take for the industry to sustain this momentum?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Linda. And, I was really very thrilled and happy with the fact that we finally crossed the 1 billion that we've been looking forward to hitting for the past few years. And I was happy that it was also done and produced by a woman. So, hey, I'm very happy for Funke Akindele. But I feel like running through the numbers, this is really brilliant and really good. But we shouldn't be here. We should actually be doing better than where we are. So I sat down and I did a rough estimate and I did a calculation trying to check to find out what would it be like if, we have more people going to the cinema. So for instance now, hello, I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
can you
go
still
ahead,
hear
please.
Me? So I was asking, what if we had more people going to the cinema? So from the calculation, we've had about 1.2 billion roughly, and we have over 250 million Nigerians. And if you do that division, it means that we only had 222,000 people go into the cinema to watch this movie. And then my question is, where are the remaining Nigerians? We still have over 249 point something million people who haven't seen this movie and who haven't gone to the cinema. What if we take this number from 0.08% to about 5% only of the entire population of Nigeria? It means that for a very good movie like Funke Akindele's movie, she should be raking in 5.62 billion. So in as much as we are commending this effort and we're saying, oh yes, this is brilliant, this is fantastic, we finally hit 1 million, which we have been looking forward to for the past years, I feel we are just starting. And a lot of things will help to this, right? So a lot of things have to be put in place, like making things better for people so that the standard of living is higher and then they can consider movies. But I'm happy that we are here, but I feel like we should be doing much better.
Right.
Like we should be going into systems where we're having movies raking 7 billion from one very good movie.
Right, you make a very good point there. I wanted to just talk about, to make the caliber of movies that we're seeing, obviously raking in so much money. But what does it take in terms of the level of investment? First of all, can you speak to the level of investments that we're seeing coming into the industry itself and how much the industry is also leaning on technology? It takes a lot, of course, to produce high caliber movies and, of course, to rake in that kind of those kind of numbers from the box office and compete on the international movie stage. But talk to us, are we seeing significant levels of investments coming into the industry?
Definitely. So I also had to do a bit of research to just find out what it entails for a good movie. So the thing about a good movie is that you need to have a very fantastic storyline, good cinematography, production, and a fantastic promotion. Funke Akindele killed it with the promotion. And I was hearing that she spent over 100 million, which is sometimes even more than the budget of an entire movie production for some of the companies just to promote this movie. And she totally killed it. Now, she was fantastic with using technology. She was everywhere on social media, on billboards, on lampposts. She did everything she had to push this movie. And I cannot take it away from her saying, girl, you did a fantastic job and we can see it. One other very important key thing is the fact that apart from having all these promotions in place, once people are happy, which are the viewers, and they're happy with the movie, there is also the word of mouth referral, which means people just keep telling people about the movie, saying, this was a fantastic movie, you need to go and watch it and it's good. You have to put in good investment if you are going to be able to make this kind of money from it. It just doesn't come as luck or chance. Investments have to be put in place in terms of the production, the crew, and a very good promotion. And we have to give it up to Funke. She did a very good
Linda,
job.
if we could just move this along. At the other end of the spectrum, of course, is the consumers themselves, those moviegoers who go to the movie theaters to watch these movies. Let's talk about affordability and pricing, which is a major part of the industry. Would you say that the Nigerian cinema average ticket prices are priced in a range to attract more viewership, or still sort of elitist in nature?
So this is a very dicey question. And most times when I try to answer this question, I like to leave it within the Nigerian economy, because if we want to compare the price of a Nigerian movie tickets compared to outside the country, the difference is really very clear. So you're talking about 10, 15, 20 pounds for a movie ticket, which is almost 20K, as compared to Nigerian market, which is still at 4,500. So I did a rough calculation saying, if a typical normal average Nigerian is going to the cinema, apart from buying a ticket of 4-5, you then have to think of buying popcorn and drink, which is an extra 3K, which brings it about 7,750. Remember, you also have to take Uber or take a ride to the cinema, which is not always very close because of the limited numbers that we have. So you also have to calculate your transport fare, and you never go alone. So you're going with a friend, which means for a typical movie of 2 people, you're technically spending up to 25, 30,000 if you're very, very, if you're not spending a lot. How many Nigerians can really afford that? Now, I would like to play on the sides from both sides, right? Nigerians want it to be cheap, want it to be affordable so that you can have a lot of people going to the cinema and watch, because you need consistent numbers, you need frequency, and you need more people at every time, because the cost of running the cinema is fixed. Whether you come or not come, the cinemas have to pay for diesel, the cost of running it, everything has gone up, the popcorn, the drinks. So they are also struggling with, how do we manage to keep the cost at an average point where people can afford to come in volume, in number, and consistently, not just ceremonially or during Christmas, but come to the cinema every week or every other week, which will keep them in business? I think the price is okay. Now, from my own point of view or recommendation, I will feel like if the government wants this cinema industry and the movie industry to do well, then there will have to be some trade-offs. Maybe reduce the taxes that they are paying so that you have more people come. Make it easy for them to be able to reduce the price, and so that you can have not just 222,000 people coming to the cinema, but 5 million people. And imagine the numbers. So if we have 5 million Nigerians only, which is at 5% times 4-5, the industry should be doing over 20 billion for every single good movie.
Well, let's hope we see those numbers playing out just that way in the course of the year. We certainly do need more people going into the movie theaters, but we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Linda, for talking to us today. We appreciate your time on the show. Well, that's our show for today. Many thanks for being a part of it. You've been watching Business Edge. Remember that we're on social media. Also, we are at News Central TV. Head to our website, newscentraltv.africa. Download our mobile app and on Play Store and App Store. Till next Monday, I'm Esther Awoni. Bye for now.